the question I'd like to ask, my children are at school in North Lanarkshire, and one of my children for the last 2 months has been getting taught in a medium, in a language that he will not be examined in. My children are in Gaelic medium education, and right now our school are 2 teachers short with 2 pregnant teachers. We can't provide teachers for those kids. Is there anything that you can do, Mr. Russell, to...
Yeah, we have a particular problem in Gaelic medium in terms of a flow-through of teachers. When I was first involved, well, I mean, I've been involved, as you probably know, in Gaelic for most of my life, but when I was first involved as Shadow Minister for Education, I did predict then that you would never get the supply of Gaelic medium teachers just from Gaelic medium education. And, you know, the assumption in the early, after 1999 particularly, was Gaelic medium education would produce more teachers for Gaelic medium education. It's not big enough to do so. So we've ended up with a shortage, as I thought might happen. What I'm trying to do is to plan ahead for that. There's 2 things we can do, or 3 things we are doing. One is to convert some teachers who want to learn Gaelic by the old PAN method to make them teachers of Gaelic and to give them a reasonable degree of fluency very quickly. I call it creating a new generation of Gaelic speakers. And when I was the Minister with full responsibility for Gaelic, I now am responsible for Gaelic education. When I was Culture Minister, full responsibility for Gaelic, I got Board na Gaelic, the national board, to focus on this idea of creating a new generation of Gaelic speakers, some of whom will want to become teachers. So we're doing that. The second thing we're doing is that we're trying to make sure that those teachers who have Gaelic anyway try and help out in Gaelic medium. Some don't want to, you know, but those can. The third thing we're doing is a planning exercise. I was at the Glasgow Gaelic School a month ago, and what I've asked them to do with Board na Gaelic is to actually lay out over the next 5 years what they will need. Now, I want all local authorities to do that, so we can then actually say what the shortages are, because this has become a bit of a buyer's market. You know, one local authority is competing with another one to try and get teachers without saying we need a national approach to this. Scotland's been stunningly bad at teacher workforce planning. I mean, this is a wider issue, you know, and one that causes me a lot of heartache in terms of young unemployed teachers. But we've really, really got this wrong. My predecessors in office up until 2007 massively over-recruited teachers without any possibility of there being jobs for them. They set an artificial figure, which was just too high. Local authorities didn't want to employ that number of teachers and weren't going to do so. As a result of which, we've got a number of unemployed teachers in Scotland who I wish we hadn't got. It's not as many as are elsewhere in these islands, but it's regrettable. Equally, in Gaelic medium, we've spent a lot of time with authorities competing with each other instead of saying, what do we need in Scotland? I can't give you any promises they're going to get better quickly, but I think all those 3 actions will probably produce a movement forward over the next few years. But I'm a great fan of Gaelic medium, and I think, you know, if parents want to choose that, then it's very beneficial for their children.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now we've got a question down here, and we've got one up here, and we'll take both of these, then we'll take one from Orkney, and then we'll come back to yourself. Is that okay?
That's great.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. I'm Reid Hutchison, Aberdeenshire Rep and also Vice Chair of the Forum. Pleased to hear your reinforcing commitment for curriculum for excellence again, but also your honesty about the backdrop of the financial climate and budgets. And it's really in that connection I can ask on behalf of many parents and many parent councils who I talk to, who are actually saying, how can we help them and how can we guide them? Parent councils will talk to their head teacher and say what's happening about budgets, and the head teacher will defer them to say it's the Education Authority, but the head teachers have devolved budgets. When you talk to education and local authorities, they'll say, well, actually, it's the Scottish Government. But they've agreed to concord that and through the single outcome agreement. And of course, if we talk to the government, they'll say, well, it's actually David Cameron and George Osborne's spending review. So how do we stop parents and how do we actually engage them in a positive way so that they actually can get through that fog and actually start asking, I think, which is what you're telling us, the key questions of whoever it is, whether it be government or local authority, but also then as parents, take a reality check of actually saying, we appreciate this is going to be tough, so give us the information so we actually can make genuine and positive contributions to that debate.
Can we just check on whether either of the other 2 questions that we've got will fit in with that, or are they on a different theme?
I mean, I'll take them anyway and I'll just work my way around them, okay?
Eric Lumsden, the Bells Quarry Parent Council in Livingston. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the National Parent Forum for organising this event. I think it is the right way forward, and it's to credit to the Scottish Government for engaging so remarkably with the Cabinet Secretary coming along today. My question is in relation to budget cuts as well. I recently attended West Lothian Council's consultation with it, and the Parent Council has been involved in that. We're going to see huge changes to the business support managers in the schools. We're also seeing cuts to the pupil support workers. It's difficult to see how all these cuts can come into force without it affecting the outcome of the Curriculum for Excellence. And it's also difficult to see how the councils are going to achieve the budget cuts that they are going to be required to do without changes to the teacher standard terms and conditions. And again, that fits in with, we're getting told that can only be done at a national level. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. And your different issue. Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else on money, finance, would like to ask?
A fairly comprehensive question.
I think I just wonder if there's any detail we haven't touched on there. These are really vital questions, and it's very important that we have an honesty about them. We should differentiate between the political story we could tell on this, and I have a political story to tell on it, and I've mentioned in my speech, I think normal budget powers here would have helped. I think we've had some appalling mismanagement of finances, and I do think that the requirement we're getting from south of the border is too far and too fast. I mean, I really think that's a problem. All those things having been said, the reality in Scottish education is this. We allocate money to local authorities. We don't ring fence it any longer, and I would justify that. I think ring fencing was appallingly wasteful. And those people who look back with fondness to ring fencing don't remember the nonsense that it produced. But within that situation, it is then for the local authorities to decide. Now, that's not a criticism of them. It's a very hard set of decisions. I've got a very hard set of decisions to make on the budgets I actually control. The hard set of decisions in terms of local authorities is the proportion of the Scottish Government budget that will go under the Concordat to local authorities. Those discussions are still underway. I'm a member of that negotiating team. All I can say is that progress has been made, but we'll see what happens at the end of the day. It will then be local authorities to decide how they deliver that. There are certain things I would not want them to do. I can have that conversation with them, but actually education ministers in that regard do not have the final say. They have the final say. Now, it's not an absolute. I can say publicly I think they're wrong, but I would rather work with each local authority to try and get the best out of a very difficult situation. We shouldn't play pass the parcel on it. Things are going to be tough. But then we have to say, and in connection with the question at the back, how would we protect the things that we think are really important? And it's not everything is important, but how do we protect the things that are really important? Well, one thing we have to say is it is an absolute truism that we're going to have to do the same or more with less. So for people simply to say there's an equation, we pay this and you get that, I'm sorry, that equation is in the past. Regrettably, for a period of time, and it won't be forever, all of us are going to have to do more for less money. So one of the things I'm saying quite clearly here is I believe in the delivery of Curriculum for Excellence. We're going to have to go an extra mile, and teachers are going to have to go an extra mile to get this done in difficult financial circumstances. And I will have that conversation with the teaching unions, and I'll have that with individual teachers. And I think that's just where we are. Because otherwise we will damage something that's really important. So it's an obligation that has fallen upon us. We didn't ask for that obligation. It's fallen upon us, and I think we have to come up to the plate and say we are going to do that. There are things that we can do to mitigate against that, to make sure that resources are a little bit more fluid. And yes, one of them is the Macron Agreement. But Macron is a negotiated agreement between teachers, local authority and government. I am not going to unilaterally put it to one side, and I think it would be very foolish for me to unilaterally say what I want to change in it now. Because if I did so, various things would fall on my head very quickly. So I will go into the tripartite discussions, of course saying, I think any agreement that's 10 years old needs to be revisited. And I know there are things in it that are difficult to justify now financially. But I think we should go into it saying this is an agreement we've all got to put our tuppence worth in and then see what takes place. But things are going to change. I mean, I can't hide it. There is a reality of the financial situation. My job in Cabinet is to fight as hard as I can for education. But my job also, as the, in collective responsibility, is to make sure that the overall decisions that we make in Scotland are the right decisions for Scotland to go forward. So I try and play both those roles, but it's difficult, and it will be difficult.
Thank